get started here. Thank you for coming out this morning. We have some panelists here for a talk on accessibility in the digital space. And I'm going to go ahead and let them introduce themselves. So thank you, guys. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, everyone. This is working. Yes. Happy to be here. My name is Emil. I am the founder and CEO of Web Hosting Canada. We're a Canadian web host offering WordPress solutions, among other online business solutions. We've got here an interesting panel for you guys today. Thank you for coming out, by the way, on a Saturday morning to join us and talk about accessibility in the digital space, and in particular, accessibility for WordPress. So we've got a panel here of very interesting either accessibility experts or people that are experiencing accessibility issues on a daily basis. So I will let them introduce themselves. Left, Michelle, you can tell people a little bit about why you're here and who you are.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Emil, for that. My name is Mike, or Michelle. I'm an account executive at WCAG, and I'm blind, as you can see. Accessibility to me is very important because, well, as a blind user myself, I experience every day, I could say, challenges, not issues, that that I face on whether there's web interfaces, applications, or just barriers within my daily life. But we find ways to overcome them, and I think that technology, is there to help us face these. Oh. Perfect, thank you. So the technology is here to help us face these barriers, whether it's on the internet or in our daily lives. So that's pretty much it for me.
I am Hines. I'm the CEO of a company called Equalize Digital. We focus on WordPress accessibility and have a plugin called Accessibility Checker. All right. We have a plugin called Accessibility Checker, and we do audits and remediation and user testing and everything accessibility related for WordPress and some non-WordPress websites and web applications.
So I'm Daniel Pez. I'm on a digital agency in Brazil called Genesis Digital. I also have a YouTube channel called WP High Performance, where I talk about performance and accessibility and all the Web Vitals things, because I think accessibility started in my world when I was in 2015, when I had to work for a government website, and that's when accessibility becomes a law in Brazil. So it was in 2015. In 2016, I went to South Africa, and there was like a must requirement for every project that I've been working for. And since then, accessibility is part of my life. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you guys for being here. And would like to maybe start off with getting into just some basic of what is accessibility to you. What are the things that are important about accessibility that you think would be useful for the audience to also know about? Everyone obviously experiences the topic of accessibility a little bit differently. So we'll perhaps start off with somebody that's directly affected we're all directly affected, but some more than others. So maybe, Michelle, you can share with the audience your experience, like how do you experience accessibility on a daily basis? What are the challenges with essentially seeing, quote unquote, content that you are digesting, and how do you consume content that either through WordPress websites or online in general?
Yes, so thank you. So being blind, so I'm born blind, right? So being exposed to content, I would say, mainly happens on the internet, right? So it goes through websites or online platforms or various other medias, whether it's Braille or whatever. But I would say, main obstacles that I could face is, for example, a player that's not accessible on a website, for example. Most websites now use HTML5. Well, not to go into too much technical details, but use the latest version of HTML, which helps a lot. But some of them are still using older versions, so it makes it hard to access the actual player. It could also be having, for example, ads in the middle of the content, or for example, having pop-ups that open while I'm navigating. So these are things that make the experience.
So pop-ups and ads can be annoying even if you don't see them.
Exactly. Even if I don't see them, they do interrupt my experience. So yeah.
Okay, Amber, how about you? How is accessibility? What is accessibility to you, and how do you interact with it on a daily basis?
Yeah. So the way I like to describe accessibility to people who are not familiar with it is that accessibility is about ensuring that websites will work for all people on all devices and all assistive technology. So a really early thing that a lot of us can understand is captions on videos. How many of you have looked at a video in the last month with the captions turned on? Can you raise your hand? Okay, there's quite a few hands in this room. And how many of you are deaf? No one, right? Some of us maybe are starting as we age to become hard of hearing. But that is an assistive technology that was created to help deaf people consume content, but it benefits everyone. Many people, language learners, can benefit from that as well, because if you are learning a language, sometimes being able to see the words as you hear them spoken can help you to understand them. And there are a lot of people who use various types of assistive technology beyond screen readers, which Mike uses, that announce it out, but there are also people who cannot use a mouse, but they're sighted, and so they use only their keyboard, or they might not even be able to have full mobility, so they might use an alternative keyboard. There are, for example, a Darcy USB allows people to type in Morse code, or they might use eye tracking, or they might use speech recognition. So it's about building websites that work for everyone, regardless of how they come to that website and engage with that website. That's kind of how I understand it. I don't know if you have thoughts.
Yeah, so I heard one phrase that changed my life. It was in a design conference in Brazil, São Paulo, 2017, and someone just said in the stage, accessibility is not a guest house. I mean, accessibility is not something that you're just gonna have to put a plugin or something that's gonna be controlling the font size, that's gonna be controlling the contracts, the colors and stuff like that, only for who needs that. But it must be, you must be thinking about accessibility since you start to build a website, because that's gonna help all the audience and not just people that is gonna have like difficult to read, or for example, when I talk about performance can also help people that maybe have ADHD, I think, and any other mental disease that can be affected by accessibility. So it's something that you must think about it, and your website must be accessible to everyone. Otherwise, you're going to be losing your audience.
Let me ask you this: what is the impact of not having an accessible website? Who ends up affected by that, and who ends up suffering, and to what extent? And maybe we'll start with you, Amber, as being the little bit of a specialist in the space and running an agency that solves that problem. Tell me a little bit about the problem of not having an accessible website.
Yeah, so there can be legal problems around not having an accessible website. And I'm going to talk more about that in my talk later this afternoon, so I won't dive into all of them, but there are laws around the world that require accessibility and can result in fines or lawsuits depending on where you are in the world. There are also marketing problems for businesses if they don't have accessible websites. We all think, or we know on large e-commerce websites, that 2% increase in conversion rate could sometimes result in hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars in extra revenue. Imagine if everyone could complete your checkout and add a cart to the product, right? So there are real-world business benefits. There's SEO benefits. A lot of accessibility overlaps with that because it's about HTML semantics, which I know we were chatting about, Mike, and I don't know if you want to talk about that. But there's a lot of overlap there with getting more visibility and being able to just allow people to do the things on the website that will benefit you. So if you don't have that, then you lose out on customers. You lose out on revenue. Maybe you have extra work for your support team because now they have to field questions that they wouldn't otherwise have to field. So,
Yeah. Michelle, you, having been born blind and never having seen, can you describe what the experience of visiting a non-accessible website looks like?
Sure, yes. So being blind myself, I use a screen reader to navigate in interfaces, right? Whether it's the internet or different applications. So, yeah, there you go. So I use a screen reader to navigate interfaces. So basically that screen reader is going to read the content as I press keys, right? For example, if I press the tab key, it's going to change element on the screen. So if I press tab, it's going to switch from link to link or field to field. And sometimes websites don't have proper labelings, right? I'm gonna switch from, for example, one link to another, but it's not gonna tell me the label on the link, or it's not gonna tell me the label of that field if it's, for example, to fill in my name or whatever. So that makes it less accessible for me to fill that form. So I'd have to call someone else, or just use other shortcuts, which makes it longer to fill in that form. Other issues are also when elements are not programmed properly, like speaking of semantic HTML, if I can't navigate to a button because it's skipped by the way it was programmed, well, my screen reader is going to dismiss it, and I'm going to be losing information that I should have filled in. So that's a couple of issues that I face sometimes as a blind user.
Have you encountered websites where they were so bad that you're just like, never mind, I'm not going to patronize this business, and you leave?
Yes, obviously. Like a lot of government sites are like that. For example, when I was trying to apply, yes, when you try to apply for a job, for example, or whatever, it's like old sites that are built with old technology that you can't really navigate for. Either they have like an old CAPTCHA form, or they're just not accessible at all because they're using some old HTML3 or something like that. So,
right.
Yeah, I have a question, and that's a bit polemic, but I would like to know, Mike, how do you feel when you go to a website and you realize that, for example, that alt description of the image is not actually describing the image, but it was made just for SEO purpose? Because that happens a lot in agencies, so they think we can use the alt description just to position some keyword or something like that, or just provide content to position on search engines, but they're not just thinking about who needs to understand what that description of that image.
Thank you for that question. That's definitely something that's, not acceptable. It's obviously when you have an image on a web page, that's important to you, not just a decoration. You want to know what's on that page. You want to be able to imagine what it is, and it may help you in certain contexts, right? So having the proper alt text or the proper description really helps. Obviously, people who use that to put keywords or don't use it, because sometimes people don't use it, and it really doesn't help. Obviously, it's not there to enhance accessibility, and it makes it much easier for us to. It makes it much difficult for us to understand in which context we are, and the next steps to do. So.
Okay, so we've got some understanding of what the experience feels like for blind or visually impaired people trying to read or access websites that aren't necessarily designed with accessibility. I'm sure that some of the audience here today is wondering, well, okay, how can we start tackling this issue? What should we be doing, assuming that you're publishing websites or content online and want to have this content be accessible to these individuals and to be accessible in general? So let's perhaps jump into sort of solution mode and talk about the how. How do we get to accessibility? How do we achieve accessibility on our website? What are some of the tools, and in particular for WordPress, being a WordCamp, that we can use to make sure that our websites are accessible? So perhaps, Daniel, if you'd like to kind of give us your take on what it is that you've found to be successful in tackling accessibility.
So I usually use extension for Google Chrome. And then we start looking at what's the font size, what's the color checking, the color contrast grades. There's AA and I think AAA. We actually try to make everything AAA, but sometimes just AA.
And let me just interject there for those
WCAG
maybe
contrast checker.
that aren't familiar with that rating. Can you talk a little bit about this AA, AAA rating? What is that, and what does it mean?
It depends on, for example, I think 40% of elderly, for example, they're gonna have like more difficult to read if the color contrast is not that good. I mean, for example, if the background is white and the text is like gray, that's gonna be really difficult to read if you have like more than 40 years. And it's gonna become more difficult if you have like more than 60 years, and it's gonna decrease your audience at all. So this is something that we need to be careful about. It is how is the contrast looks like in this website. The other thing is the font size. I usually at least 16 pixels because I'm thinking about mobile, I'm thinking about the web, I'm thinking about when you look at the website and the TV. So minimum 16 pixels. That's what I'm doing at the moment right now. And the other thing is about the rows of like fields, of tabs, everything you need to think about. There is someone in their audience that's going to require assistance, that's going to be using a keyboard or is going to be using another tool. And you must be, this website must be accessible for them as well. Otherwise, you're losing your audience, you're losing revenue, you're losing a lot of things, you know.
And we were chatting a little bit earlier, and Amber had an interesting insight about one way to look at accessibility is try to browse a website or use a website without a mouse. That's a great way to kind of get a sense of what that looks like, how easy it is to actually use, navigate, and operate. So with that in mind, Amber, how do you deliver how do you help businesses or individuals achieve better accessibility on the websites? What are the tools that you recommend or the things that you see often that could help the audience today get better and more accessible websites?
Yeah, sure. So I pulled up, which I think you were starting to get at with the color contrast guidelines and the levels, the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines 2.2, which you can find if you Google, or we can maybe share these links later for people. So that's what Daniel was talking about. And then we do full audits looking through this, testing with some different tools. We build most of our websites in the block editor, so I have a couple of tools that I'm happy to just show real quick that are block editor extensions to help fix problems or maybe enhance accessibility. So our plugin accessibility checker we use to test, and then the screen reader only text is a plugin that Reactive Studios put out. It's free. I really like this plugin. What it does is it extends the block editor so that you can select any text, and then you can give it a format of screen reader only, so it will no longer be visual or available for sighted people, but it will be read out. So you can use this to add additional headings if you need to have the right heading structure, or you could use it on a button link. For example, if you want the visual text to say learn more, and then you could have screen reader text that says about our products so that it is a better context link.
And if we back up just a bit and maybe just give some insight to the audience about just high level about screen readers and sort of what does that screen reader experience feel like, and what's important about it?
Yeah, so when you are visiting a website with a screen reader, and I am probably not the most qualified person on the stage to answer this question.
So maybe let's field that to Mike.
But, let's go to Mike and
what
then
does
come
that
back
screen reader
to me.
experience look like for you, Mike?
Yeah.
Sure. So basically what screen reader really does is it reads the content on the screen as you navigate through the web page, right? And you have specific shortcuts to navigate through different elements. For example, for headings, for text fields. So when you have to fill in a form, you're filling in a text field. So you have a specific shortcut to navigate to text fields. How you would navigate with through these, it's with the arrow keys or with tabulation, or with those specific shortcuts, which would help you skip through these elements faster. And when
so
a
like
website,
headings, right? That's something in my testing and when we work with users, I noticed they use headings a lot to navigate and understand. So that's when I was saying you could use this to add a hidden heading, because maybe the design doesn't do it, but like a screen reader user might need a quick way to jump to this section.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, for example, you could add, as you said earlier, you could add like the proper structure, right? You know that when you're writing an HTML document, you have to respect a specific structure. For example, level 1, level 2, level 3, for example. You can't just, write level 1 and then move to level 3. It has to respect a very specific structure so that the user know knows, sorry, which area he's in the document. So, yeah.
Oh, can I demo something that I just discovered 5 minutes ago, like before we started this?
Please.
Because we were talking about tools, and one of the tools, I love, there's so many like free tiny helpers. There's a browser extension called Headings Map, and if you install it, what it does is it puts a list of the headings and their order on the left-hand side of the
Kind of like
screen.
Google Docs menus.
And what I have just put up is the WordPress plugin repository. And I have a search for accessibility. And the heading 1 on this page is search results for accessibility. And then we have a red highlight on our next level heading, which is a heading 3, which is the title of the plugins.
There you go.
That's what you were just talking about, skipping a heading level. So I think we all need to go. Someone needs to open a track ticket. Anyone volunteering? But yeah.
So those are some of the tools and techniques. So we spoke about some. I mean, you manage and create some plugins that help accessibility. What beyond using plugins? Daniel, you mentioned that there's the process of accessibility starts at the outset of the project, at the beginning, right? You don't want to get to a completed project and then be like, oh yeah, this also needs to be accessible. So what would you recommend at the beginning of a project to start with or to think about to ensure that once you're actually delivering that project, that you're at least 80% of the way there, so you're not stuck kind of going back and revisiting the whole thing at the very end?
I think it's a really complex question because sometimes, depending on the business, they want something focused on design. For example, let's say, oh, I need this website feels calm, this website feels relaxed, so I need a smaller font size, lighter font, and that's something that you need to discuss with the customer and make them understand they're gonna have like a beautiful website, but it's not gonna be accessible to everyone. So he's gonna be losing money, he's gonna be losing revenue, and it's not gonna be available for all the audience. So I think this is something that we need to discuss. And then we can give examples. For example, if you look at the LinkedIn, if you look at Facebook, if you look at Twitter, all the social networks, they have a really high, good contracts. And the reason why is because they want to be accessible to everyone. So if you look at these type of social networks, these type of big websites you see, they were built, but basically on accessibility, based on performance, based on the better user experience. I think that's what describes what the website should look like. It should deliver the best user experience at all.
Okay, and let's, sorry, go ahead,
If I can
Mike.
jump in. Yes, thank you. So I think also by also looking at each component in a page and including all the accessibility tags that are related to it would really help. For example, a button, really including the button tag that tells the screen reader that it's a button, for example. Or, for example, if it's a link, but you want the screen reader to say it's a button, you could also change the role and make sure that it announces that as a button, for example. So just use the semantic HTML elements to your advantage and make sure that it's accessible also using these tags.
Yeah. I'll add, a lot of us build websites for clients and we hand them off and then they go write their own blog posts or edit their about page or whatever that might be. So that was part of what motivated us to make our plugin, was because we wanted to give sort of like an accessibility report that's in many ways like the SEO reports that the SEO plugins do, that say, hey, wait, you might need to fix this before you hit publish. But I really think training is so important. We spend time hopefully training our clients, if we're handing off the website, on how to interpost. Well, that training should include things like you should use headings in the right order. Don't just pick it because it's purple, right? Like, no, it needs to be the H2 or the H3 or whatever in whatever context. Training them on how to add the alt text or whatever it might be, and training your own team in-house as well on an ongoing basis is really important, because it's the only way we're gonna, you talk maintaining, like, you can build an accessible website, but if the people who are editing the content on it don't have the tools and the education and the knowledge, it's never going to stay accessible. So I think it's really important to invest in that both with your clients and with your own internal team.
Yeah, 100%. Training is essential, especially if you're handing off the system to somebody else that's going to be generating content moving forward. Plugins are a great way to identify low-hanging fruit or just tweaking process to make the content that you are creating accessible. So let's assume we've done that work. How do you then verify other, we're fortunate to have Mike on our team, so when we build something, we just show it to Mike, and you're like, hey, is this accessible? Is our easy way to find out. But for those that don't necessarily have somebody in their direct surroundings that is visually impaired, blind, or otherwise affected by a disability that prevents them from consuming content, how would you recommend, what kind of tools or what's available out there that allows us or allows site creators or content creators to determine whether or not their content is accessible and is sufficiently accessible for their audience? And either Amber or Daniel, if you guys...
I remember one tool called Joe's, and there are I think another two tools in the market, and then you can simulate how the website looks like for someone that is blind, or for example, I just forgot the other IDs, but if you have any difficulty to see the website, then that tool can simulate those type of problems that someone who needs that kind of accessibility, and that tool can simulate and show all the problems that website have and must be fixed. This is something that is required. For example, when you're working in the government websites, you must check in these kind of tools, and you need to get a certificate and send to them to get the project accepted. At least in Brazil, that works like that right now.
Yeah. So depending upon what kind of website it is, there is actually some laws. There are some laws in Canada that require users or people with disabilities to be included in accessibility plans and accessibility auditing on a regular basis. So if you are not lucky enough to have someone like that on your team, then there are companies that you can go to that do user testing where you can pay. The International Association of Accessibility Professionals is an association that it's a certifying body for accessibility specialists, but many of those accessibility specialists are also people who identify as having disabilities of various types. So that could be a good place to go to find some of these companies that you could hire, or a freelancer to hire. You might even just ask in the community. The WordPress core accessibility team has office hours that are available in Make WordPress Slack, and you can show up and someone can answer any question you have, whether that's about a website that is your website, a website you're building for a client, your theme, your plugin, whatever that might be. So you can just come in Slack, and so you can get feedback there if you don't have, that resource. But other times, if you're a nonprofit, you might have volunteers for your organization who are willing to volunteer and test that are people with disabilities. And I think putting that out into the community and saying, hey, we're really trying to bring stakeholders in, people who we serve, who might be better benefited by a more accessible experience, and we're trying to build a group that we can go to on a regular basis. I do think it's very important, though, to pay people with disabilities for their testing time. At least in the United States, people with disabilities are typically underemployed and maybe don't have the financial stability that a lot of us have. And so I wouldn't always expect people to test your website for free. You should invest in paying people to test your website.
Thank you for that. And Amber will also be hosting a session at 2 o'clock speaking to more of the frameworks and legal frameworks around accessibility and maybe some of the risks of not having an accessible website. So I feel like that's going to be an interesting session to also attend. So as we move forward and we're in the age of the new age of AI, how do you think these new emerging technologies are going to be impacting accessibility in general? And we spent a lot of time talking about accessibility from the consumer standpoint, but what about accessibility from the creator standpoint? You're perhaps blind or visually impaired or have some other impairment, and you want to become a creator, you want to put content out there. How do you think these emerging technologies are going to be impacting impacting your audience? And perhaps, Mike, you can give us some of that insight.
Definitely. Thank you very much, Emil. So looking at the future for creators, people who really want to put their content out there, especially, for example, me, when I want to create a website, I would normally have to get someone to build it for me, right? Tell them what I want on it, and then get a payment to do that. Now with AI, there's a lot you can do. You can literally, write a prompt. You can answer questions, and it's going to build basically the website for you, actually. So how that works basically is you're going to tell him, I want a website for a consulting business about, for example, I don't know, let's say IT, and basically it's going to build the base content for you, right? And then afterwards you can build on top of that yourself using the block page builder, which helps a lot, because then I don't need to pay someone to go ahead and build the whole website for me and add more content to it. I can just go ahead and add articles, pages, and all that, because I would say the core parts are already there. So it's just going to add more to what already exists, instead of me having to redesign things every time. So I think that AI is really going to help with that. Sorry.
How about you, Amber or Daniel? Have you? Where do you see this? Let's fast forward 5 years from now. Highly evolved AI systems building and creating content for you. How do you feel like that tooling is going to help for both creators and consumers of content in terms of accessibility?
Yeah, I think one of the good tools that is already in the market is the text to speech. So you can have like an assistant, and there are some websites that are already using it. So for example, if you want to search for something, you can search through voice or you can search through text. And there is like an AI assistant. So it's look like a person, but it's a tool behind of that, of course. But it helps a lot, because sometimes it's really difficult to find information you're looking for, and there you have an assistant just close to you that can answer all your questions and pretty quickly. So I think this is the future, and I think this could become more and more powerful. And the other thing that I think about AI is, for example, internationalization. I just came from another talk about the multi-language. And I know there are tools in the market that are trying to understand the idiomatic language of other countries and try to transcribe that inside of the website. So it's not just like translate the website, but you're going to have like an assistant that is going to understand your language, how do you speak, how do you pronunciate, and communicate with you, giving you the information of what you're needing, what you're requiring, So I think that's the future.
Yeah, I know in the United States there's a university who's been doing a lot of experimentation and research on trying to build a tool that would assist people with disabilities, particularly blind people, but other people with disabilities, with very complex processes on the web. So the thing that they've started focusing on is booking an airline ticket. So you could just say to your AI assistant, whatever it's called, hey assistant, I want to go to Ottawa for a conference these dates, and then come back. And then it would go out, it would find the flight, it would know that you like to fly, you don't ever want to leave at 6 a.m. because that's horrible, right? And it would choose the right flight because it knows you, and then it would fill out all those different forms. It would have your credit card number, your passport number, all of the things, and it'd be great, you're booked. Instead of you having to go through 10 pages of searching for a flight, adding it to a checkout, all the things, right? So I know that there's a lot of research and things that is being put into, can AI help make user experiences better? I do think, going back to that underlying HTML and the semantics, those are going to be very important, because if we hit a world of the future where people don't visit websites, they get their information from websites via ChatGPT or some similar version, right? Like if the AI can't understand the websites because the HTML semantics are not there, then it's not going to be able to function. But I think, we would be remiss talking about AI to not talk about the fact that there is a lot AI cannot do correctly right now. Automated alt text is one that got very popular very quickly in the WordPress community. There are multiple plugins that you could just buy a few credits and it will just generate alt text for every image and save it to your media library. And I have tested multiple of them and they are never right. They don't have even very basic things like our Make WordPress Accessible t-shirt, where it literally has the text Make WordPress Accessible on it, and it's a white t-shirt with black text. It doesn't write an adequate description to describe that t-shirt to someone who might want to decide if they want to buy that t-shirt, and it has the text on it. So I very much caution people, content creators especially, to think that there are easy shortcuts. Accessibility overlays are another thing which I'd love to have you talk about your experience with those, Mike. And there's a great website as well, the Overlay Fact Sheet, if anyone wants to learn about them. But I think sometimes website owners fall into the trap of thinking there is a shortcut or a fast way, and I know agencies sometimes get sold on they can make affiliate commission by reselling these tools, but they don't always work great, is my understanding. And can you speak to your experience on that?
Definitely, yes. So website overlays are basically plugins that you add on a website, and they say that they make the website accessible, fully accessible, which is not the case, right? What they do is you add a line to your code, and then it kind of adds a toolbar to your website, and then it's accessible, which is not true. Because to make a website accessible, you really need to look at the code, each line of code, and then check for which elements need to be made accessible, and actually add the proper tagging and all that, which the plugin does not do. It just adds a toolbar, and it may add a few, semantic elements here and there, but it doesn't actually make the website fully accessible because it doesn't change the cursor, like when you interact with the cursor in a certain way, it doesn't change that part. Plus, it really doesn't work. Actually, it's just to me, it's just a marketing. Anyways, but yeah, going back on the question, I think that using plugins like, for example, WP Accessibility, which I think we mentioned earlier, it's a toolbar, but it actually goes into the code and then adds the proper tags to make the website accessible. For example, you could check a box that says, I think it's surround selected text. It's gonna be, I think it's like a white text box that's gonna surround the text as you navigate with your cursor. So these things really go into the code and make the user experience actually much better for the user. So
because it's WordPress specific and it's not a SaaS that doesn't really understand. Is that what you're getting at?
Yes.
Why you think it works better?
Exactly, yes. That's why. That's what I'm trying to get my point here. Yeah.
And I've heard rumblings that the screen overlays are also problematic in more ways than one, and for more people than one.
Yeah, I might add the big news that we had this week in the United States is that there was a class action lawsuit filed against Accessibility, which is one of the top overlay companies, by business owners, not people with disabilities, and it was for breach of contract because there were multiple business owners who actually got sued, because that's how it's enforced in the United States, for having overlays on their website because the overlay made it worse for people with disabilities. So the business owner said, okay, you're not doing what you said. So it'll be an interesting thing to watch.
Yeah. Just in addition, I've tried once that tool to describe an image, and I've generated an image through AI, and I got that same image, and I tried to describe that image, and that doesn't work at all. So I think we are not there yet, but we're gonna get there because right now we can generate images. So maybe in the future we can just get that image and try to get the description. But the human description, I'm not, I don't know, maybe in the next 5 to 10 years, but not soon.
Yeah, so yeah, text with AI has been an issue, not always been an issue, but has been an issue, at least from what I've observed in the last year or so, both from understanding text within images and writing text within images. So likely to, hopefully something that will get better over time. And maybe as a final thing to wrap up with is, well, cost. Let's talk about cost of accessibility. What would it cost for, let's say, somebody in the audience here hasn't really thought tremendously about accessibility in the past, has a website, has a business, is online, and would like to have a website that's fully accessible. What would that traditionally or approximately cost a small business user that is running a WordPress website to get up to par? And maybe we'll let Amber lead that.
Well, so cost really depends a lot on the size and scope of the website, so it's hard. But one thing I'll say is I wrote a blog post earlier this year about an experiment I did on my own personal website, which I hadn't updated for a long time, and it had a theme that I had previously purchased. It had thousands of errors. It had issues like unlabeled comment fields. It had color contrast issues. It had a lot. And in 2 days, I decided I'm just going to switch to the free 2024 theme. And now it's not perfect. I have issues in my content I haven't fixed yet, right? But it removed literally thousands of problems by just switching my theme. It took me 2 days. It was free. Now, of course, if you've got a lot of content that has to be remediated manually, then there is a time investment associated with that. But that can be done in-house sometimes, which can make it cheaper. There are ways to make it more affordable, I think, and it really depends on how you approach. Another thing that I really love to do is instead of paying a designer lots of money to fix all your inaccessible PDFs, you just hit delete on the PDF and you put that into a web page instead.
HTML over PDF, noted. Yeah. Daniel, what's your take on that cost for accessibility?
I think the cost is, think about if your website's not fully accessible, you're not reaching the whole audience that you have. So you're losing money. That's the first one. The second one is, it's not a cost to make a website accessible, it's investment, because let's say you're gonna have like your content structure, you're gonna have like alt descriptions that describe actually your images. You're gonna have like a fully functional website with all the accessibility, like rules and the buttons. Like if you're following all the rules and you have a really good content, you're gonna have better SERP positions as well. So it's investment, it's not a cost, but it's something that you must think since the beginning of the project until you publish the project. Because then you can compare the results. Like, I've done it before, and we had a website of one customer, and it was like reaching, let's convert the money, I think it was about $2,000 a month, dollars, really small customer. And after optimize their full website, so everything, accessibility, performance, everything, it was just, it went from 2,000 per month to 15,000 per month. So the impact was huge. And the difference was like a small difference, you know, but the small things make a huge things when you talk about the digital marketing.
I think too, it's good to note that accessibility is a journey. It's an ongoing practice. Very much like I will draw this parallel for clients a lot. You never say, hey, I SEO optimized my website, I'm done now. Right? You are always working on it. And accessibility is the same way. And so the way I think about remediation a lot is like do an assessment and create a plan. Start with the things that are highest impact, like your navigation, your header, your footer, global elements. And then you can kind of go over time, like make some things better every month.
Thank you. And if we're coming up in time, just want to give Micah the final opportunity here to speak a little bit about that as well.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, everybody pretty much summed up what I had to say here, but really it's a continuous work. It's always something you still need to continue working on, especially if you're adding more content to your pages. But for those who are really, starting off, I really think that, from my perspective also as a blind user, you're really using, leveraging AI, for example, the new WordPress AI we launched really helps. You can just create your content through there. It's gonna basically create the content, and you go ahead and add in your text, your content, your headers, and all the content. And because you're using a block editor, it already knows what you're adding. For example, the headers, it's gonna add it automatically in for you. so you don't need to actually have someone program the website for you, right? So that's another way to leverage AI, as I mentioned, which will in turn make your website accessible because of the block editor. So that's it for me.
Do we have time for a question, or are there any questions in the audience?
Yeah, sorry. So I just need to come over to you with the mic so we can get it on video, but I will come over to anybody who has a question.
Okay, good morning. The information is amazing. Thank you for filling in some things with AI. But I have a question specifically. Have you considered accessibility when dealing with metaverse sites? My company is starting to build metaverse sites for WordCamp conferences, so they're all immersive, and we're trying to figure out how to adapt accessibility challenges to metaverse as well in 3D and 4D environments. It's relatively new, so it's like it's almost unknown. But.
Anyway, cash question. You want to fill that, Amber?
To be honest, I don't know if I have much experience with metaverse. I mean, so I would tell you web content accessibility guidelines applies to any content on the web, so I would spend time reading that and see how you can translate it. If you're trying to have like alternative experiences like VR or things like that, there is definitely some great resources out there with regards to accessibility in those mediums. I don't have a great resource right now off the top of my head, but you could find me later and I could send you some. I don't know. Do you have thoughts
Mike,
about
have you had a
metaverse, Mike?
VR experience yet?
No, it's too new as a technology. We haven't had any experience, but I think, again, AI really is going to help because it literally generates in real time. So it could generate some descriptions or exactly. So that's
Audio
something we could
description.
leverage. So.
Real-time audio descriptions can definitely be a big help there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Questions?
Thank you. Thank you for the panel, first of all. It's kind of a topic that is related to this. They don't call it accessibility, but they call it universal acceptance. That is, in my domain name space, like in the ICANN world, which is the regulator for domain names, kind of a topic. It's universal acceptance would be important in the case when you host a website and you have people enter information or like even just sign up for a newsletter. So you would want to make sure that right to left Arabic script is usable in email addresses and you can actually send emails there. Or Chinese, for example, or just because there's so many internet domains now that are longer, a lot of websites still don't accept those as your email address. I tend to make a sport out of it, testing it, kind of using a .email address for my domain. Is there any, so one resource, sorry, I'm going to recommend a resource for it, which is from ICANN, is the uasg.tech, is a website for this, but is this, I don't know if it's really part of accessibility. I'm kind of trying to see what your take on this is, because it speaks into languages that Daniel mentioned earlier, but I do think in general it allows people kind of, to interact with you and your website and your services to keep this in mind. So maybe it's more just a note, or I don't know if you have anything to add to that. Sorry.
So really good question. About internationalization, I think you must think about accessibility at all the time, you know. But when thinking about like multi-language, my point of view, we need to write content in that language and not just like try to automatically translate, because sometimes the translation is not that good, you know. And I think that's part of accessibility because, for example, let's say that you're going to use a translation plugin, for example, and that's going to maybe describe your images. So if you have written a description in English, maybe that description in like Mandarin or any other language can be like a different meaning, you know. So I think you must be careful when you're dealing with accessibility in multi-language, and think about like every language in a separate field, you know, and not just like, okay, I'm gonna all the accessibility tests, make everything accessible, and then after that, I'm gonna be translating now my website to another idiom, and that's it. You know, I think that's the main key.
So I think that's probably all the time we have here, but thank you for your question, Frank. Unless we have another one?
Sorry, I was asked to mention WordPress Accessibility Day, so I will pull that up. I guess I'm logged in, so you get to see the admin bar at the same time. WordPress Accessibility Day is a nonprofit virtual conference. It is from October 9th to 10th. It happens on Zoom with live captions and sign language interpretation, and you can register for free. We don't have registration open right now. We will do that as soon as we announce our speaker schedule in a month or two. And in the meantime, what I would recommend if you want to get notified is if you go to 2024.wpaccessibility.day, you can join our email list right there at the top. There's a form with join our email list, and that will get you notified when registration opens for that free WordPress event. It's organized by lots of people from the community and the core accessibility team, and it's usually a really great way to continue learning. I will also say, which I don't have it pulled up, but maybe I can find it real quick. I run the official WordPress Accessibility Meetup group, which is part of the official WordPress Meetup program. We meet twice a month on the first Thursday at 10 a.m. Central Time and the third Monday at 7 p.m. Central Time. So next Monday we will be meeting. You can find it. It is also on Zoom. If you just go to the WordPress Meetups page, you can find it. It's WordPress Accessibility Meetup. Sometimes Google is faster because I guess there's 760 WordPress meetups you'd have to dig through to find it. But that is another great way to continue learning. And our talk on Monday is which page builder is the best or worst at accessibility. And I'm going to be comparing like 12 of them.
Can you give us a sneak peek?
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you. I think that's, unless there are other questions, I think that's time. So thank you so much for being here and listening in, and thank you to our panelists for participating, and have a great rest of your WordCamp.